I'm Dwyer, and I teach in the theology department. And this is the third and final segment of a three-part series we've been doing on the history and mission of Thomas More. And today we're going to talk about spirituality at Thomas More. So last session, we focused on how our Catholic identity at Thomas More influences our academic offerings. And we talked specifically about the Catholic intellectual tradition and Catholic social teaching. So today, though, we're going to talk about something a little bit different, because here at Thomas More, we're not only focused on the development of the mind, we're focused on the development of the whole person. So today we're going to talk about how our Catholic identity and mission influences community life, both for students and for employees of the university. Ex Corde Ecclesia is a church document that lays out guiding principles for Catholic universities, and it's a really interesting document. We're actually going to have an opportunity to have a conversation about that document in the spring, so stay tuned for that. But in this document, it talks about how pastoral ministry is an essential dimension of a Catholic university. So giving opportunities for spiritual growth. This is an essential part of our mission, not just a thing on the side that we do. And so this document talks about how a Catholic university should give its members an opportunity to encounter the gospel. But this sharing of the gospel always needs to be done in a way that respects people's freedom. So it's always a proposal, not an imposition. It's a sharing of Christ's invitation to relationships, because that's how Christ was, right? He didn't impose, he proposed and left it up to the individual to decide, do you want to come follow me? So these opportunities that we offer at a Catholic university should help students integrate the theological principles that they're learning in the classroom with their non-academic activities. So helping them integrate faith and life, because faith, the principles are only meaningful if they're brought to bear in our real life experience. And we aim to do this not only for students, but for our faculty and staff as well. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to introduce our speaker, Professor Hannah Keegan. She's an adjunct professor of theology here at Thomas More. She studied philosophy at Hendrix College and theology at the Pontifical John Paul II Institute in Washington, D.C. And in addition to teaching, Hannah has also served as an editor for Rural Words Press since 2016. She lives in Northern Kentucky with her husband and two, soon to be three, children. She has one on the way. And Hannah is also a convert to Catholicism, so she's going to be sharing her perspective on the Catholic Mass with us today.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry in advance if my two toddlers make a cameo appearance. I put on cars downstairs in hopes that they can be stable in one place for a matter of an hour, but it's always unpredictable. So like Caitlin said, my name is Hannah Keegan. I'm an adjunct of theology here at Thomas More, and I'm really happy to be with you today and to share my simple, very small experience of the Mass in particular, for what my experience has been entering the church from being raised Protestant, and kind of my coming to a greater appreciation and love for the Mass. So for Catholics, the Mass lies at the heart of what it means to worship God. So as someone who was raised Protestant and entered the Catholic Church in my early 20s, I found my going to Mass at first very strange. It seemed super ritualistic, not very personal. We were doing a lot of aerobics, like kneeling and standing, and I wasn't sure what was happening. And finally we got to the Lord's Prayer, which I knew, and then I realized that they don't say the rest of it, so then I was like, what? The one thing I know. So I understand this feeling of it maybe feeling foreign, and I wanted to just speak a little bit about what the Mass is for Catholics, like what it is as substance, as the core of our practicing and worshiping in our faith, and also how I've grown a great affection for it in my own life in these years of being Catholic. So a Catholic worship service is called Mass because it comes from the Latin word missa, that means to be sent. And we attend the Mass in order to then go out into the world, embracing the world into the love of God. So this is what the Mass is. At each celebration of the Mass, why it's so precious, I mean, really, not because I become better, right? Of course, this is the hope, but mostly it's a way of me participating in God's love for humanity. So each Mass has what we call the sacrifice of the Eucharist, the sacrifice, the reliving the experience of the apostles and Jesus at the Last Supper. And this is the greatest celebration of God's love for us, that we recall that he loves us so much that he gives us his only son to die for us. So going to Mass is, for Catholics, our actual participation in his body, right? In the sacrificing again of his body, in the reliving of his sacrificial love for us. And at the end of Mass, we're called to go out, to go forth into the world, proclaiming the love that we've witnessed to, that we've been given an avenue to go into ourselves. So I think the Mass sometimes, if you go for the first time or to begin going, it's very structured, right? There's a clear form of the liturgy where you have particular readings, you have particular responses, you have particular gestures that you make, signing the cross or kneeling or standing at different moments, that can seem kind of rote and also can be lived kind of rotely. But I was thinking a lot about it because I see it really similarly to how I live the bedtime routine with my toddlers. And I see that I can live the moment as a moment of like an annoying routine that I have to go through, right? Bath time, brushing teeth, which is like so hard with them. And then like a million books, and then songs, like 3 songs, 3 very specific songs, so I can always live it as like, okay, I have to go through this because I need to go grade, or I want to go watch a movie with my husband, or I want to eat my dinner or eat the M&Ms that I've been hiding from them all day, right? So I keep thinking like I have to get through the routine. But if I reflect on it, right, the routine is actually good for them. The routine is actually something that we've made up for them, my husband and I, in order to help them prepare better to go to bed. So if I'm actually attentive to it, it's an experience of a way of me loving them. It's an experience of the way of us caring for them and embracing them, not as boxes to check in order to get to the bedtime, end. So it's the same really for the Mass, that the way that we're invited to participate in the Mass is really this invitation of being attentive to every step of the liturgy. So when we kneel, we're in a different posture, literally in front of the Eucharist. I can hear them coming. I'm sorry. Yes, just a second. Okay, 4-year-olds aren't really rational, sorry. So, but yeah, so I see that the different posture that we live, kneeling, or the different signs that we make, bowing down during a certain part of the creed, or saying certain responses, it calls to mind for me the different ways that I would like to be attentive, even if I'm not very attentive naturally, right? So if I'm kneeling, I'm recalled to a deeper attention to what's happening. If I bow, I'm recalled to a deeper attention of what's happening. If I'm singing or if I'm silent, I'm recalled to a different attention of what's happening. If I'm seeing beautiful images or if I'm smelling the incense, I'm recalled to a different awareness of what's happening. So I see all of the different particulars of the Mass that seem maybe very ancient or antiquated or arbitrary even, are actually precious gems that help grow my awareness, right? Grow my attention. So having the Mass every day on campus is really a gift. And it's not just a gift so that Catholics who work for Thomas More can get to Mass daily, right? But it's really true that the grace of the Mass pervades the life of the school. That we believe really that the Mass is an experience of grace that is not just for the Catholics in the church, but actually for all of the community of Thomas More, all of the community of our communion, of our belonging to each other as brothers and sisters. So the sacrifice that the priest offers that we participate in is not just lived at a personal level, but it's lived at a communal level, right? That we belong to each other, that we belong and care and love. Our unity is what the Mass is referring to. So we give even special attention on campus to this moment in the schedule, right? We pause the day really for this special privileged moment that takes place on campus to kind of recenter what it is that is at the heart of our being together, at the heart of our call to educate. And then also it's helpful to say that the chapel is open. I mean, right now it's a little awkward because there are classes in there because of COVID. So, but it's open, right? So it's open to not only attend for anyone to attend Mass, it's also open to go and pray and to be in silence, right? Maybe it's a quiet place to meditate, to be still, to take a break. So it's a beautiful place to go and to be attentive in whatever way that you can to what's being asked of you, what the needs are of your own heart, of the needs of your students, to be able to be still. So
And I was wondering if you could speak to a little bit the experience of communion. I just know from speaking to you, this is something you've wrestled with in your own family, the question of those who are not Catholic not being able to receive communion. Sometimes those who are not Catholic experience that as alienating and maybe a reason to not want to come to Mass, when really at Thomas More and anywhere, the Mass is open to anyone. And the hope is that the whole community will feel free to come and worship God and participate in the Mass. But then this question of communion can sometimes be a stumbling block to people not wanting to come. And so I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
I think this is a really good question that I think I still ask often to myself and with my family. But I mean, personally, I went and experienced going to Mass for a year before entering the church and being able to partake in communion. So the first thing I would say is that I found that time also discerning whether or not I was going to enter. It was really a time of beauty that I could even go and participate. And as a non-Catholic, anyone is invited to go up for a blessing during the Eucharistic procession. Like whenever you go up to receive communion, anyone who is not Catholic can go up and receive a blessing. And I never felt like that was meaningless or less of a privileged, beautiful encounter with Christ than receiving the Eucharist. But I think in my experience, there's a fullness in receiving the Eucharist that's privileged, but I also felt that there's a way to participate that's beautiful. Even to my kids now who can't yet receive the Eucharist, they go up for a blessing, and it's still a beautiful way of participating in the Mass. But my experience with my family helped me kind of ask this question at a deeper level, because at our wedding Mass, for example, I was already Catholic at that point for a few years, and my family is not Catholic. And so it was the case that we were having a Catholic wedding, but we had to explain to them that my parents, and anybody who was not Catholic could not partake in communion at the Mass, which was not a small thing, because in my Protestant tradition, communion is weekly. It's a privileged moment that they care about. So it was definitely a hard moment for my mom to reconcile why that was not rude or exclusive, but actually like a good request, a reasonable request of her. And the way that I understood it, because I really had to ask myself, is this reasonable to ask her not to receive communion? But as I understand more and more and more, what the Catholic Church proclaims that the Eucharist is an objectively different thing than what I believed as a Protestant, right? As a Protestant, I believe that the bread and the grape juice was a symbol of Christ's body and blood, not actually transforming substantially into his actual body and blood, which is what we as Catholics believe, which is called transubstantiation. So those are two objectively different and also contradictory beliefs, right? One believes it is the actual body and blood. One believes it's a representation of the body and blood. So when I realized I'm asking my mom not to partake. The church is asking my mom not to partake. They're also asking me not to partake in communion if I go back to my Protestant church at home with my family. And I realized that the reason for that is actually not to exclude or to say you're not good enough or, do better. It's not at all that, but it's really this call to live with integrity, my belief. Because when the priest raises the host and says body of Christ, you say amen, right? Which is an assent, right? I agree, right? I believe this. And if you can't in good faith say, I believe this is the body of Christ, then we ought not to partake. Even as Catholics, if you don't believe that, right? You actually have to believe that. But at the same time, going home, it wouldn't be authentic for me to partake in communion because of, the change in my belief. So I realized that the request is not this way of being exclusive or of saying anyone's better than or less than, which is the way my mom was wounded by experiencing it, right? But instead is really a proposal to live with integrity what you believe, which is that it's a symbol, or live with integrity what you believe, which is that it's actually the body and blood of Christ. And so the church is asking us to live with fidelity and integrity what our belief is, not to change or to compromise or to give in a moment of wanting to be unified, because the greater unity comes from both of us living with integrity what we believe, more than just to bend over to whatever the other person wants for us to believe in that moment. So I just see that the grace of the unity of my mom and I, or my family, it's not that we agree on anything still in these ways, but that the more deeply I can live with integrity my faith, or the more deeply she can live with integrity her faith, the more true our union is, because ultimately it speaks to my integrity as a person, right? And her integrity as a person, and our desire to live well, like reality. And so I don't know, I see that the wound may be still there because you want to be entirely united with the people you love, right? And in every way. So the fact that we baptize our children is foreign to her, I was baptized when I was 12. So to have our children baptized is strange, as well as a lot of the ways that we live our life, So, but I see that she's growing a respect for it, just like I have a deep respect for her and the way I was raised. But I see that there's been a change in me, and she's growing to respect it because she sees I'm happy, right? And that I'm not condemning or judging her, but calling her to live well what she believes, and desiring to live well myself what I believe. So I don't know, that's my experience. But also I see that she's really happy to go for a blessing too, like to invite her to participate in the way of, you still are invited to recognize the significance of this moment and the privilege of being united to Christ in the way that is given to you at this Mass, is something she doesn't take for granted, that she really loves.
I wanted to reiterate, Hannah may have already mentioned this. So Andrew mentioned we have the 8 p.m. Mass on Sundays, but then Mass is offered right now at 12:30 every day. So if you would ever want to be accompanied to Mass, we would definitely be so happy to do that and answer any questions that anybody has about Mass. Please feel free to ask us. So that's 12:30 every day. And I just want to thank our speakers. I reached out to each of them because as I feel like they made so clear today, they're not only great professionals doing so much for our university community, but they're just beautiful, authentic Christian witnesses. They all live their lives in such an authentic and compelling way that really comes through in everything that they do. So thank you so much, Hannah, for blessing us with your time and talent and expertise.